that one out. But we are going to be starting off, as mentioned before, with the New York Midseason Showdown run back. I imagine at some point these guys have played locally. I imagine it's more than one time. Chuppa Cross versus Jeudy Azzarelli. Chuppa, achievements haven't changed since earlier. He was a regional champion back in 2011 and a bunch of cuts at various tournaments since then. He does have the Dondozo team, but he's rounding it out with some unique partners. The only Arcanine I've seen here on stream this weekend, and the Pokémon with that Revival Blessing that, as we saw, can really swing a game in its favor. So the Masquerada and Golden Go wrap it up. I think those are pretty standard at this point, but definitely a different take, and a take that even in this like open team sheet format, it's maybe something you've not put the hours in. So even looking at it, you still got to game plan it a little more on the fly.
Yeah, I think Palmet's a really tricky Pokemon to play against, right? Where, when you're trying to figure out how you want to play a game, like, oh, like, I need to get rid of this thread, and then I can do, I can sweep with this Pokemon or whatever, where, there's not really a way for the flowchart where, like, the chart ends and there's a gap, and then later the flowchart continues again when that Pokemon's revived, it's just not a thing you normally have to worry about.
I think it's just a massive arrow that, like, loops back to the Pokemon that you knocked out, and you have to run that process again, which in some cases can be really difficult. Of course, his opponent is not going to make it easy for him. Jeudy Azzarelli, world's finalist in 2014, also top 8 that year, going back with some other big performances, and a slightly different team for him. The focal point is Palafin. We saw him playing it yesterday. We know how well he can execute that strategy, getting the 0 to hero combination done really well. Wraps it up with a Golden Go, has an Amoonguss, the Salamence, which has been something not many people have really tapped into, the Palapa, which really rose to prominence in this tournament, and the King Gambit as well to tidy that one out. So some nicely balanced teams, but they do kind of have a big focal point strategy involved.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty interesting team, too, where, we saw kind of a more traditional Rain Trick Room team in the last round, where, it's like, oh, you've got the Pelipper and then a Swift Swim Pokemon, where this is a very different type of Rain team, where, certainly Palafin enjoys the effects of Rain increasing the damage of its moves, and, some other Pokemon enjoy their fire weaknesses being mitigated, and there's the Hurricane on the Salamence that we don't see very frequently, but it's not like it's more of like a synergy team, right, rather versus the, I'm just going to send out the quick Pokemon, speed goes whir. I think it's also interesting to keep in mind the types of these Pokemon where, looking at the team match, like, especially when you think of Rain, there's an Electric type and a Grass type on Chuppa's side of the field, probably pretty important, right? But then, if you look a little bit more closely, Jeudy's Pokemon, like everybody but Golden Go at least starts as a resistance to grass or can gain one through terrestrialization. So it's going to be a tricky game. Just like the last time Chuppa was on stream, I think the margin for error is very small. He's got so many frail Pokemon and so many choice items. And like if he does choose to bring that Masquerade, and we saw the choice band before, it can't use Protect. And I think it's going to be very easy for him to get caught, use a Flower Trick perhaps on a Pokemon that winds up resisting it and then lose Masquerade really easily. I think using that wisely is going to be a key to the match for him.
I really liked in the previous round that we saw him as well. He didn't rely on the Dondozo combination. So this could be one of those awkward situations where, the team could win without using its focal point. And that's really kind of fun when you can attest quality team building to a team that executes in multiple different ways. He doesn't have to lock in 2 Pokemon. A strategy that requires 2 choices, that's 50% of your team, and that's a lot to give up if it's not going to be that impactful or something that he believes Jeudy can definitely make his way around. I think Jeudy can go multiple different ways in this one. Definitely got a lot of options. Definitely got a number of grass terror types as well, as you called out, for kind of defensive options and making sure that you're dealing a lot of damage. But that nice offensive lead takes the field for Chuppa, the Pawmot, and the Meowscarada, going up against the King Gambit and the Palafin. So I imagine the Palafin's going to want to get out of here. Definitely doesn't want to face down the Meowscarada, but getting that 0 to hero working would be very, very important.
Yeah, it's a cool opportunity for Chuppa here where you almost have to hard switch the Palafin, right? I think we ill-advised to try to flip turn into Palmont Meowscarada, so almost for sure has to hard switch. Chuppa has no information other than the 2 Pokemon he's seen here, but it's a big opportunity, right? Palafin, when he comes back in, is going to be much more powerful. So, what can he get out of this forced switch?
It's going to be the Amoonguss taking its place, so making sure that, something that the Pawmot may throw that way, or the Meowscarada actually is going to be feeling pretty good if it's going into what was the Palafin. The Salamence comes in afterwards as well, a double switch right off the bat for Jeudy, so making sure that the ball position is exactly how he wants it, as the Meowscarada pivots around with the U-turn. We'll be going towards the Salamence, obviously gets the Protein, becomes the Bug type, does a little bit more, that's still not enough to be particularly threatening, especially after that Salamence has thrown down the Intimidate. But the Choice Band means if you're not comfortable with it, you have to get it out this turn, or else you're going to get really, really stuck. He's going to be able to choose what he bounces it out to. And interestingly enough, no fake out there. So potentially just calling that there was going to be some switches. Goes right for the close combat. And that's 2 resisted hits into the Salamence. Feeling real peachy about that switch if you're Jeudy.
Yeah, it's a nice information, at least for Chuppa. You know, we talk about information gathering. That's not really a skill that matters much in the open team sheet. But within a game, it does, right? He now knows all 4 of the Pokemon that have been selected on the other side. You know, like many of the King Gambit we've seen, this one is holding Assault Vest, so he's kind of got a switch there, right? Both Pokemon actually being forced out. So, you know, was able to shed that Intimidate, now has the option of trying to apply one of his own, which won't be super impactful here with these 2 special attacking Pokemon, but could at least, you know, get Arcanine out ready to threaten damage onto this Amoonguss.
Yeah, that is going to be an important switch as it comes in, gets an Intimidate down of its own. Obviously, not always going to be the most impactful, especially when you know that the Salamence relies on special attacks. So being able to deal with that is fine. It is going to take a big Draco Meteor for its troubles, coming down under half. Salamence's special attack going down drastically, and some of its health going away to that Life Orb as well. The Golden Go, setting up the nasty plot, wanting to be the big focal point of this team, I think is really important. As Amoonguss does throw the Pollen Puff out towards the Arcanine, not very effective. Little bit of extra damage there, but it's going to be pretty irrelevant.
Yeah, a really nice opportunity to set up that nasty plot. You know, kind of the advantage of getting to U-turn after you see what your opponent's done is it's so free for Golden Go, right? Where like perhaps some other Salamence builds could do a little bit more here, but Special Salamence really struggling to threaten Golden Go, and it's not going to be able to do anything now. Amoonguss, you know, basically can't do anything at all either. It's immune to Spore, so a pretty nice spot, and now it can kind of just start wailing away. Also, not the worst thing in the world to get some damage on Arcanine if you're Chuppa, actually, where, you know, at some point, you know, you don't want to really get it caught up with Palafin. It's just going to get checked and knocked out anyway,
yep.
Where, you know, probably at some point in the game it gets switched out, kind of just becomes a sacrifice for a free Intimidate. So this damage, you know, it doesn't really cost much.
Not the worst at all, but we are going to see one of the first terrors of this semi-final is the Golden Go over on Chuppa's side of the field, becoming the Steel Terror as we've seen before, getting the extra damage on what could be a monstrous Make It Rain after that nasty plot. That is going to be absolutely huge. Arcanine opens up the turn with an extreme speed, get a little bit of extra damage down on that Amoonguss. The Salamence realizes it might be doomed after this turn and sets up the Tailwind. So over to Golden Go with the Make It Rain. It's going to connect on both sides, obviously. It's going to deal huge damage. Both Salamence and Amoonguss dropped. That nasty plot was huge.
Yeah, just absolutely annihilating the Pokemon on the other side. That could be a huge Tailwind, though. I mean, obviously, Jeudy got caught a little bit there, where kind of had no choice but to give up a couple of Pokemon. However, the Tailwind is a big deal. One of the reasons why I'm sure he preserved the extremely frail but fast, you know, Scarlet and Pawmont is to help deal with this Palafin, who now has a Tailwind behind it, where those Pokemon have a really hard time checking this, where, you know, the hero's entered the battle now, and the hero's quick.
The hero is going very, very fast, and he is going to be able to cause a lot of problems if he's able to land attacks pretty consistently. That is going to switch the game around very, very quickly. Of course, you know, there is going to be a number of thoughts to put into it. There is still the Terror as well available for Jeudy, so being able to maybe swing a matchup that could get a little bit dicey when he needs to. But right now, I think he's in a pretty solid position. He's going to be able to just start taking things out and just causing problems that way.
It's a nice pairing to have here, too. I mentioned before, it might be nice to cycle that Arcane out for Intimidate, but you really want to risk giving King Gambit Defiant Boost? The answer was no.
Well, I didn't want to go with that, as the Arcanine is now removed from play with an easy Jet Punch from this Palafin. King Gambit with the Kowtow Cleave into the Golden Go. That is going to be obviously helped out by the Steel-type Terror, getting rid of the Ghost-type here. As the Shadow Ball heads towards Palafin, it's a lot of damage, but it's not enough for the knockout, absolutely crucially. That said, I mean, the Pawmont's coming in could buy a little bit of time with that fake out. That is going to be really important to get through these turns.
Yeah, it's kind of still an awkward situation, though, because, like, well, and then what, right? And what do you do with the other Pokemon where, you know, fake out's fantastic once you get down to one, but he's got to find a way to do that last little bit of damage. Now he has 3 Pokemon that are extremely frail and could easily be knocked out. Pawmont, in a way, the bulkiest Pokemon remaining on Chuppa's side of the field. Certainly the defensive stats are nothing to write home about, but it does have the item.
Yeah, Pawmont here is going to be putting itself in a very interesting position. I love actually getting the preview of Chuppa's screen here, see kind of where his head's at on how he sets up this game. And that could be very interesting on how he decides how Jeudy decides to play, because he can't just give the Pawmot room to wiggle.
Yeah, this is such an interesting two Pokemon pin, because it's so hard to ignore Golden Go. You kind of have to knock it out. It's like, I guess you don't have to, but it's very tough to resist that. But if you all in Golden Go, and just allow a free Revival Blessing, and we've seen how that can turn out.
Yeah, well, Golden Go going with the Protect right here, being able to keep itself safe, doesn't want to get caught by the King Gambit, and Jet Punch will just go into the Pawmot. So the Sucker Punch is not going to be effective. That means Pawmot is given the time. It gets one opportunity, and it's Revival Blessing. So it is going to be, of course, the Arcanine, the only thing available right now. So that is going to be a late game Intimidate as well to try and shut down Chuppa. Opening up, that Sucker Punch was not the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, interesting to know what Pokemon was targeted by the Sucker Punch, because, if it wasn't Pawmot, just knocking out Palafin would have been even better, but, that's a huge advantage now. Sort of a strange situation where getting Arcanine in without counter-effectively setting off Defiant's going to be tricky, but you always like a 4 Pokemon to 2 advantage.
Yeah, that is a very, very nice. It looked like, obviously with the amount of damage down, that 3 to 2, definitely a little bit closer than it may look. The Palafin is super low though, and you're going to have to find some room. I think getting the Meowscarada in at some point is really the key here for Chuppa. Being able to, just take a Jet Punch quite comfortably would be very nice for him here. But there it is, Meowscarada coming in at full health once again. Palafin Jet Punch will go towards it. Just still take over half. That's pretty preposterous. Oh, the critical
hit. I was gonna say, it wasn't that comfortably, but there's a reason for it.
Yeah, the cleave coming through with the Tailwind obviously helping out this King Gambit as Golden Go is taken out. So, of course, it's now down to another 3v2, and there's no more Revival Blessing. You're only allowed to do that once per game, rightfully so, but the Tailwind is over. I think what's interesting here is, there is, of course, a lot of priority on the side of Jeudy, but it's all going to be about targeting and looking at the team, what does he do on this tough turn or the later turn where Pawmot is going to come in and be able to fake things out?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So, Chuppa not quite at checkmate here, but going for the check. The Intimidating Palafin is going to make it a lot less effective. King Gambit is going to become a lot more, but, if you could find some way to knock out the Palafin here without losing Arcanine, you have 2 Pokemon that are looking pretty good next to King Gambit, but there's still some things to be concerned about here. Particularly the new mechanic of this generation hasn't been making too big of a factor yet.
No, there is certainly options that could be looked at. I know we have our opinions on King Gambit and how that one works, and some of the choices people are making about the Terra types there. So we'll see where Jeudy goes with it. He did save it for very, very late. As Arcanine's Extreme Speed goes before Jet Punch, doesn't matter, just able to knock out the Palafin. So not such a great showing for it in this one, as King Gambit is left a whole lot of work to do. There's going to be a knockoff. We'll send it into the Dark type. Do a little chunk of damage, not very effective, of course, because of the typing. But getting rid of the Assault Vest, the Kowtow Cleave into the Arcanine, easy knockout right there. For the second time in asking this game.
Yeah, avoiding taking any dangerous fire-type attacks. So one thing to keep in mind with some of that sort of strange-looking play there. So the Palafin isn't choiced, so it can't, but it still can't protect.
Right.
But it does have a non-attacking move. So Sucker Punch does not guarantee a knockout on it, but Extreme Speed does. So likely explaining the reason why Chuppa sent out the Pokemon in the order he did there.
Yeah, the Arcanine actually with the Extreme Speed is going to become important, and that's why, he's obviously, making sure he keeps getting it back with the Pawmot and the Revival Blessing. But a free turn, essentially, for Chuppa, not able to protect the King Gambit. It is the Assault Vest variety, so wouldn't have access to that Protect. And just being able to get that damage down. King Gambit has a lot of work to do right now.
Chuppa going for the fake out here, predicting a Sucker Punch in that slot, which would fail if it targets it.
Yeah, Meowscarada going for the knockoff though, so getting that damage down. And then the King Gambit going with the Kowtow Cleave into the Pawmot, so nicely read by Jeudy. It is going to be just this 1v1, and what can Meowscarada do against this King Gambit?
Yeah, not looking great. There's kind of the game there, it seems like, right? Where if he called close combat instead, he'd win the game. But Jeudy calls rock, Chuppa calls scissors, and we got a 1-0 lead.
It was definitely a rock, paper, scissors end game. And Jeudy, I think in the middle of that game, it definitely wobbled. There was a huge make it rain to start the game, but it just wasn't enough to seal that advantage. And honestly, Jeudy's team, the back two were so strong, they knocked out 4.5 Pokemon. That is really solid to see, and I think this team is so well balanced.
Yeah, I think I'm really enjoying watching these Palafin teams play out where, it's being forced to switch like that, you're going to often start at a disadvantage. But, if you can pick the right Pokemon, you can still win from there. It's a pretty uncommon pairing between Palafin and Kingambit, but it worked out really well there, right? Where, yeah, it was so difficult to get Arcanine to really do anything. We saw Arcanine kind of being perhaps the MVP of the, maybe perhaps Palmette was the MVP the last time we saw Chuppa play, but Arcanine the one finishing the check there and getting another big Extreme Speed knockout here, but it was kind of like just not enough this time.
It was certainly a tough one to see. The Arcanine came in, did the correct things, but it still wasn't enough, and I think that's really kind of grueling when it comes down to being able to flex this team in its full. I do like that we're seeing the Revival Blessing. I like the kind of implications of the gameplay that it has. Getting your Extreme Speed back after you've got the big chunk down on Palafin, really nicely done. But still a little bit more to go. Even if you get 4.5 Pokemon, it doesn't seem to be enough to stop Jeudy right now.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, too. One thing that's reminiscent of the last time we saw Chuppa as well is that the Game 1 played out similarly, where I feel like he made a nice deceptive move with his team preview, where he opted not to select the combo. Last time in Game 1, we saw Dondozo, but not Tatsugiri. But, it's like, I don't know what Jeudy was expecting. I think that these guys know each other well enough, and I'm certain that Jeudy wasn't caught entirely by surprise. But, a sneaky thing to do when you have the Dondozo team right now. I'm just not going to bring it at all.
Yeah.
However, despite that, he doesn't win the first game. So now, he's shown that he's willing to do that. And he's still got to find a way to get 2 in a row.
The Dondozo may be something he has to look and lean back on a little bit. It's one of the focal points of the team, but he obviously feels like Jeudy just has him locked if he does that. That is a team that this team definitely has prepared for and is probably concerned about just giving up a matchup that he's comfortable with. You can't be doing that when you're down already in a game. So back into team selection, both trainers mulling over their decisions, making sure they don't make a mistake. Jeudy, one up in this one, does have a little bit of the breathing room, a little bit of extra wiggle room as he can kind of, drop this one and send us to a effective best of one. But he probably has to make the guess, try and figure out what Chuppa's going to pivot to, and know that there's other options in this team.
Yeah, I think I think both teams are pretty fun in that regard, where they both have a lot of different options. And we've seen some teams out here like very clear modes. I think there's a little bit more flexibility here. I'm saying Chuppa's side, you have 2 Pokemon that typically enter battle together, but they aren't required to by any means.
They don't have to come in at the same time. They just have to end up on that at the same time. So certainly some old choices that he can make in this team lineup. We saw him play just the Dondozo earlier. There could be potential world where he plays just the Tatsugiri, maybe, using that choice scarf that it has to try and cause some problems. So a lot of thought going into this team select, going the distance on the timer as well, being able to take it all the way there. But the leads will be coming out. Amoonguss and Kingambit for Jeudy, Azzarelli, Meowscarada, and Palmette. Very fast and very offensive for Chuppa Cross.
Yeah, I see this pairing once again. Trickier spot this time, where Palmette can't really threaten a knockout on the Kingambit with Amoonguss there. Meowscarada has a little bit more free reign, but we saw how much damage it was doing to Kingambit last game. I think it's a really nice lead for Jeudy to start out this game, where Chuppa's going to have a hard time doing anything without shuffling around a little bit.
It's going to be a tough one to get that easy damage off, and I really do think Chuppa's committed to this shuffling that you've been talking about, being able to move things around, and the Meowscarada bouncing out nice and early with a pretty impactful U-turn. Shuffling, though, is going to start a little bit differently, as it is going to be the Kingambit leaving the field in place of the Salamence. A really nice Intimidate once again. The thing that I did notice, of course, that the Palafin wasn't in the lead, so it could just indicate that the Palafin is not getting brought to this one at all. Another very small amount of damage put down on the Salamence, and of course there's going to be a follow-up bit of damage. This one's better into the Amoonguss, but it's still not really dangerous or threatening damage in the long run, especially because the Amoonguss can just bounce out and get rid of that little bit of chip damage.
Yeah, the rest of it's kind of seeing eerily familiar, where once again Golden Go coming out here, absorbing any potential spores, but Palmette not going to be so lucky.
Palmette getting caught by the spore, not able to take that one. It's a nice idea, right? But it was already a grass type in that slot, so it's not like the spores is going to go that way. I think that's probably a little bit of a tough one. It's one spore immune for another spore immune is a pretty obvious which of the 50% chance do I want? Yes, Jeudy picking the correct one there, and this Palmette, if you can get rid of it early, early, get rid of that Revival Blessing. I think he's going to be in an even better position than he has been in a couple of, maybe even the last game.
Yeah, I mean, he's dreaming of Revival Blessings now, but it's going to be pretty tough for it to wake up. I mean, even if you get a one-turn sleep, just having a Palmot that can't do anything out in the field for 2 consecutive turns is going to be rough to get in that situation.
Well, it does leave the field. It's not taking its turn of sleep, so that could hurt him a little bit later, as it is going to be the Meowscarada taking its place. The Amoonguss leaves as well. Maybe trying to fish for the Arcanine switch in. The Arcanine we know isn't there in this game. Draco Meteor from the Salamence. Yeah, that's a pretty easy knockout. Meowscarada, not known for its bulk. Of course, the special attack will drop on the Salamence and lose a little bit of HP for that Life Orb. The Golden Go trying to make itself the focal point. Once again, a nasty plot, setting itself back up with that boost to the special attack.
Yeah, I think it's a tough spot, though. I mean, we've already lost the Meowscarada. Another Pokemon is not sleeping. I got to keep in mind, we don't see it too often. It does have the natural cure ability, so switching out wise there. Palmot back like nothing ever happened. So, it's a great force switch, but Palmot a little bit just laughing that one off.
Yeah, but Palmot coming in does have access, of course, to Fake Out once again. But, you Fake Out the King Gambit. I think really you just need to start racking up damage with these huge Make It Rains, landing that from the now boosted Golden Go. I think a Make It Rain here. Definitely, pick up the Salamence, get good damage down on the King Gambit, and try and follow up with the next one before you're back to normal with your special attack. That's certainly a tough turn here, as it looks like, the Fake Out's been left alone. I do like this, actually, just trying to turn up the heat a little bit with the Palmot and its close combat.
Yeah, this King Gambit just so difficult for that Golden Go to deal with, where, I mean, if you could pick up that knockout, it'd be big, but Jeudy knows better than just give it to him that easily.
Yeah, it is going to be switching out, and I have to imagine, the Amoonguss coming back in definitely doesn't mind close combats. Definitely takes those a lot better than a King Gambit. We're also going to see a Terror coming from Jody's side of the field. That is going to be the Salamence changing its type, becoming the Steel type, so doesn't want to just give it up with that Make It Rain coming through on this turn. Wants to be able to take that a whole lot better. As Palmot will close combat into the Amoonguss. Another little chunk that can be shrugged off by Regenerator. Something to think about there. As, of course, the Salamence setting up the Tailwind. So trying to capitalize a little bit here, while it takes and tanks this Make It Rain.
Yeah, the last time, too, we saw the critical hit in the Amoonguss. We learned this time, not necessary.
Yeah, it doesn't need to get it at all on this one. Already got that chip damage, but Amoonguss knocked out, making way, actually, for one of those Pokemon that can capitalize on the Tailwind. Probably quite good for Jeudy if you're in that position. And you did, of course, do that without giving up your King Gambit.
But it is still Palafin, so it's pretty rare you see that in the back, just because it's currently a 0. It's a less ideal way to have this Palafin out here, where its stats are much lower than they would be if it were to switch in and out of battle. But hey, maybe Tailwind's enough. Maybe it doesn't need to be in its alter ego form for this game.
I think it needs to be there to be useful, but of course, with the Tailwind, you would be able to potentially bounce out with the flip turn and get a little bit of damage down on some of these frail Pokemon. The Palmot leaving the field, making way, of course, for the Tatsugiri. But it is going to be on its own. It's not going to be jumping in the mouth of the Dondozo like it traditionally does. As Palafin uses that speed to flip turn away, the Tatsugiri takes it very, very well indeed, just through the typing. And Palafin will be coming back as a hero. But this Tatsugiri, really doesn't care about the Palafin late game either. The King Gambit will come back to the fore. So this Salamence will get to land the Draco Meteor. And even at -2, it's more than enough on this Tatsugiri. So a great read from Jeudy to punish that switch in.
That's a huge knockout, too. With the Choice Scarf, probably would have been faster than the King Gambit, and very difficult with Palafin to damage it. So, crucial knockout for Jeudy.
And the King Gambit taking this Shadow Ball very, very comfortably as the Golden Go loses some of its HP. A massive read there from Jeudy to put himself in a really commanding position in this game. He's got the Salamence, he's got the King Gambit. I know the Salamence is low, but there's a Palafin in the back that's already been on the field.
Yeah, some interesting places, or interesting things to consider here. So the Salamence special attack now is, rapidly approaching 0, where it's not really creating a whole lot of threat. Could knock itself out here, which might actually be valuable for Jody's side of the field, but it's a little bit more difficult this time for Jeudy to cause King Gambit to avoid Palmot if Chuppa does choose to attack. We've seen him kind of favoring Revival Blessing in the past, but man, it's King Gambit's just been such a problem for him this series.
Well, Salaman's going for another Draco Meteor into the Pawmot, just showing how frail that Pokemon can be, though, taking that after 2 special attack, or technically 4 stages of special attack. And the Salamence is going to knock itself out with the Life Orb. So that little bit, just the, Salamence's last wish as it goes for it. Pawmot will throw down the close combat. So that's heading into the King Gambit. It is going to drop its defenses as well. So the King Gambit getting nothing accomplished that turn. And it's all down to the hero Pokemon. It is going to be the Golden Go, setting up another nasty plot, so making a really sticky situation for Jeudy here, where, okay, you've got to stop the Golden Go. You cannot let that attack you because you will just get knocked out. But are you going to be confident enough to let Pawmot just use that Revival Blessing? I don't think you can make a 1v3 comeback like that.
Yeah, plus, I mean, and Jeudy's side of the field, too. It's also an electric-type Pokemon fighting a water-type Pokemon, right? Where, sometimes just knocking at another Pokemon can be a blessing also. Yeah,
the double shock, I think, should seal this one and push us through to the Game 3 here in the semifinals. Of course, it is going to be time for some terrestrialization. See if you can help that out. As we get to see it's Pawmot's turn for the Terra type. It's going to be Terra Electric, so this is going to be a very, very easy knockout for the Pawmot. I'd love to see it get one right here. The Palafen's going to try and shut it down. Oh, it's going to get jet punched for its troubles, but it doesn't matter. Golden Go is there to tidy up.
Yeah, it's unfortunate to see Pawmot go down, but still, I think its presence in this battle was definitely a blessing for Chuppa.
Yeah, the Shadow Ball will come through. 3 stages of increased special attack as Golden Go drops the Palafen, and we're going to Game 3 here in San Diego.
Kind of a fitting showdown at the end of this game here, where Palafin has kind of been Jeudy's ace throughout this series, and Golden Go's really been Chuppa's, where we've seen so many Golden Go over the course of the weekend, but I don't know if any of them have quite been as effective offensively as this one has, where it seems like he manages to get the nasty plot almost every game, and the damage is really added up.
He definitely gets the nasty plot set up very comfortably, and I think that's due to the way he pivots the board around too. The Golden Go always seems to come in at the right time. Being able to come in at the right time because of its ability as well is a huge help. So definitely sort of making sure that things are in a good position, that the following turn, he's able to set up that nasty plot. He's never looking at anything that's super threatening, and if he is, he has been able to, of course, Terra out of it a couple times as well over the course of this tournament. So one more game to decide our first finalist here in San Diego.
Yeah, very interesting team preview here. Certainly, Palafin didn't have quite as much success coming from the back, but I don't know if that was really the problem there. I'm kind of curious if Jeudy's willing to keep playing out the beginning of the game the same way, where Chuppa's played pretty good cat and mouse here, where he sends out the lead combination. So far, I think both games, Meowscarada and Pawmot, but there's never really a chance to actually knock out the Meowscarada, even though it is choiced and so frail. He gets it out of there very efficiently. And we keep winding up the situation where the special Salamence winds up on the field next to Amoonguss, which really just doesn't do anything at all to Golden Go, allowing for a very easy, nasty plot. I'm curious if Jeudy wants to keep providing that or not. On the flip side, if he doesn't, I think part of the reason why that keeps happening is because the core of Pokemon he's picking do such a good job of checking the option of going to the Dondozo Tatsugiri thing. So maybe Chuppa could consider it if he thinks he's intimidated Jeudy out of it. I'm not sure if I would. It just seems like the Golden Go mode is working well enough that, why not keep going for it? But I would guess that we'll see both players go for at least some sort of switch up here.
I definitely think there'll be some variety in the order at the very least, let alone potentially the Pokemon choices. And the Palafin just felt a little bit behind, and it was looking a couple too many Pokemon to try and clean up the game with, of course, only single target attacks like Jet Punch. So a lot of work for it to do, and it just wasn't able to get there. Not looking super heroic in that situation, just kind of falling a little bit short.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Hey, the hero always arrives late, I'm told, but maybe a little bit earlier than this time.
Well, there is definitely going to be some changes, as it's Salamence and Golden Go on the side of Jeudy, and the Pawmot and Golden Go on the side of Chuppa. So both trainers realizing that is a Pokemon they would like to get into play, so why not just lead with it?
Yeah, much trickier position this time for the Golden Go. I guess at both sides of the field. Certainly, both of them at least start out as Ghost-type Pokemon, so I don't really want to get bonked by one of those Shadow Balls. But, Chuppa's got to be a little careful here, right? Where having the mirror play out while you're at a speed disadvantage, potentially because of Tailwind, is tricky. But it's not so simple, right? Typically, this matchup, we see both of them terrestrialized to become pure Steel types, and doing that in front of Palmot's a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, because then it has access to, obviously hit you really hard with close combat. If he wants to buy that little bit of wiggle room, maybe to set up the nasty plot. The pure Steel types is well within its right to get faked out as well. So that is it's a tough decision, right? It's like you don't want to just be left as the Ghost type who's getting hit by the non-Ghost type but still getting a lot of damage dealt. As Palmot will fake out into the Salamence, so we'll be making sure that it can't set up that Tailwind. And of course the Shadow Ball just coming through from Jeudy's side. It's not a Ghost type anymore, so it's not going to be that massive amount of damage, but it does get the drop to its special defense. It did go first as well. Golden Go setting up with the nasty plot. The special attack is through the roof, and he's going to have to try and knock that out quickly with the special defense drop. He's well able to do it.
Yeah, that's crucial information, too. The speed thing is going to be a big problem. And the special defense drop makes it worse because now Jeudy's Golden Go is checking Chuppa's on its own. But even if it wasn't, Salamence can't do much damage to Golden Go, but certainly could do the, 30 hit points that are necessary to guarantee that would be a knockout. So it's now a tough spot where Chuppa basically forced to either protect, switch, or just give up the Pokemon that's been the key to his success in the first two games.
It's the Pokemon as well that he just invested a turn in, setting up with the nasty plot, so not the easiest situation. But he does admit this is not the time for it. It's in a sticky one, and it's not going to be able to get out of that one too easily. Swapping it out for the Meowscarada. Palmot will double shock into this Salamence. That's a big chunk of damage coming through, and it used up all its electricity. Salamence will set up the Tailwind, so Salamence playing a very supportive role here, just taking hits and, of course, setting up Tailwinds. As Golden Go throws out another Shadow Ball, was obviously fishing to knock out Chuppa's, but it's not going to be very effective against that Dark type. There is certainly some knockouts on the table here for Jeudy, though.
Yeah, he's got a bunch of pressure for the upcoming turns, right? Chuppa's team, again, there's two Pokemon very quick and frail. Don't really want to deal with this. You don't have to. Palmot does still have its Focus Sash, so that's good at least. But, Salamence's offense has been a little whelming this series, but neither of these Pokemon are going to want to get bonked by a Draco Meteor. And then there's still the Golden Go sitting there, right? Which, based on the damage it's doing, it could be trained a little more defensively, but certainly enough where, easily in concert with Salamence could knock out any Pokemon on Chuppa's team.
Well, it's not going to be working with Salamence on this turn, as that leaves the field in place of the Amoonguss, one of the finest switches that I think Jeudy has been making, getting that in a great position. The Palmot leaves the field, so wanting to save itself for potential return. Fake out later as well. He brings out his own Golden Go. It is still going to be that pure Steel type, so it is going to be able to cause some problems. The Sucker Punch fails, coming through from Meowscarada. Obviously went after that Salamence slot, as Make It Rain will do some big damage, but there was no boost. He didn't work in a nasty plot, so he's just going to be able to miss those knockouts.
Yeah, but now what, right? Meowscarada should get an attack off here, so it doesn't have to worry about the Rage Powder from Amoonguss, but it's nearly been knocked out. The Golden Go also being weakened drastically here. There's still the opportunity if these Pokemon are knocked out, as we've seen repeatedly. One of them could be revived later in the game by Palmot, who seems to get that off every game, but quickly losing a bunch of health on the Pokemon on his team that could actually deal some significant damage.
Yeah, that is one of the big factors. And particularly with the Golden Go on Jody's side staying as the Ghost Steel, you really would love to use those Dark type attacks. But just as I say that, it looks like there's going to be a change up with the terrestrialization. It is going to be the Golden Go on his side, also taking up that full pure Steel type. So a little more vulnerable to some of the other moves in the game, but certainly in a great position right now. Golden Go on Chuppa's side will protect, doesn't want to mess around with that one, as it is going to be another Make It Rain. Even with the special attack drop, this is still going to really hurt the very frail Palmot, and it's going to come down and just get the extra bits of damage down. Still a lot, still easily a knockout in the following turn with the critical hit.
Yeah, there could be a lot of damage there. The added effects of Jody's moves keep coming in here. You see a Leaf Storm from Amoonguss. I've talked about it a few times. I think it's the first time that someone's actually used it on stream, but still waiting for the first Leaf Storm to connect. Perhaps, either looking for a switch or, maybe with the terrestrialization, expecting that the Make It Rain would knock out Golden Go, and then, the Leaf Storm would bounce over to the partner.
He's saving it for finals. That's when he wants it, right? It's like being able to throw that out in finals is the winning move, maybe, is where we're going with it. But Jeudy taking his Golden Go off the field, obviously picking up those special attack drops has started to hurt and started to cost him a little bit. But the Salamence coming in and feeling pretty good about itself there. Obviously able to land another Intimidate down onto this Pawmot. It does help out a little bit. Pawmot already annoyed by that. Time to leave the field, time to get back out of there and switch in for the Meowscarada, so the Amoonguss can't be sporing at this turn. But if the Meowscarada gets caught by any attack here, then it's just going to get knocked out because it's so low from earlier. Golden Go special attack going back up. Once again, the real commitment to the bit there from Chuppa, being able to set up those nasty plots as the Leaf Storm misses the Meowscarada, and we're back after a couple switches with no tailwind.
Yeah, a potentially huge dodge there that, Amoonguss, again, its offense is not amazing. I'm real confident it could have done 12 damage there. So, Meowscarada avoiding a blow that might have ended this series in some ways. There's also a plus and a minus, right? It would have been a free switch, but he's now threatening Salamence, but not going to take advantage of that. Instead, going to use this as an opportunity to hopefully get Pawmot in safely.
Really try and set up a lot with that Pawmot. The Salamence also leaves the field here for Jeudy, so another kind of set of switches. The King Gambit being revealed as the 4th Pokemon for Jeudy here, so yeah, no use of the Palafin. I think most people have already figured that out, but it's going to take this Make It Rain pretty well. The Amoonguss isn't, though. The Amoonguss is going to get readily knocked out by that, and of course let the special attack drop.
Still, it's a cool situation now where it's an amazing play where Pawmot gets in safely, and it's actually a lot better that it happened the way it did for Chuppa, where if Meowscarada had been knocked out, Pawmot gets in anyway, but now Fake Out's available. Like, having the hard switch really helped him because it moved the Fake Out turn one later.
Yeah, the Fake Out turn being available here without obviously having access to the Ghost typing on Golden Go means you can Fake Out either of these Pokemon and start causing problems. So really enjoying the way that Chopper's been playing this one out.
Yeah, I mean, although it's tough, right? Because, one of them's threatening a Sucker Punch. The other one we've seen is faster and certainly is... almost certainly is in range to KO the Golden Go and Chuppa's side of the field. So it's still a complicated position for him, likely forced into a Protect here. But neither of the Pokemon on the opposing side of the field want to get hit by close combat either. So there's still a call here, right? King Gambit can't choose to Sucker Punch both Pokemon.
Yeah, that is annoying. If only it could do both. As the Golden Go on Chuppa's side keeps itself safe. Pawmot will just fire off the close combat, though. The King Gambit getting easily felled. Didn't even try and slow that one down or work around it. Probably expecting the Fake Out, which Chuppa has just skipped over that turn, realizing is not relevant. As Golden Go over on Jeudy's side will fire off the Make It Rain, but the big thing here is it's going to give itself a special attack drop. That is going to start to hurt later in the game as Pawmot is knocked out. It's still going to be a 3v2 situation for Jeudy, though, trying to fight back, and he's got the Salamence and this Golden Go with its health getting rapidly lower.
Yeah, and he hasn't revealed that last Pokemon yet. We've seen it, or seeing it right now, in fact, as it comes into battle here. But, it's a tough where Jeudy had to make a guess here about what it could have been. I think Tatsugiri is a reasonably likely outcome. But, it's a tough spot here where it is the quickest Pokemon in the field now, could threaten a bunch of damage to either of these Pokemon. And it's, again, we're in another situation where, Golden Go isn't really the... the most immediate threat on Chuppa's side of the field, but ignoring it's very dangerous, right? Both these Pokemon could knock it out, but there's an opportunity cost of doing that, of allowing Tatsugiri to fire off a free attack instead.
And there's no tailwind, so this Tatsugiri comfortably the fastest thing. Salamence forced into the Protect here, so making sure that it doesn't take too much damage on this one. Tatsugiri going with the Icy Wind here. Obviously would do huge amounts of damage to the Salamence, and helps with the speed control, trying to keep up with it.
And now the faster Golden Go going to be on Chuppa's side of the field, crucially.
The Golden Go will follow up with the Shadow Ball, though, so a little bit of chip damage is going to hurt. The Golden Go is so low as well. A little bit of return damage from the Life Orb. As a Shadow Ball in retaliation, trying to knock out the Golden Go here. It will get the knockout, so that is now down to a very sticky situation. Don't forget, Chuppa still has access to that very, very low health Meowscarada, but it's still another Pokemon you have to look at knocking out.
Yeah, I mean, crucially here, too, right? Because Tatsugiri can almost close this one in its own, right? Certainly, Salamence not going to want to take an Icy Wind, and these Golden Go has been slowed down enough that it should easily be able to be knocked out by this Meowscarada here. That was a nice knockout in the previous turn for Jeudy there, but it might have been Fool's Gold rather than Gold, because it seems like Chuppa's still the one who has the pin.
Oh, yeah, I mean, he's got the Tatsugiri. I know that the Salamence is not going to appreciate appreciate taking one of those icy winds. It doesn't have access to Terrestrialize to be the steel type, which would have helped it out significantly, dropping 2 ice weak types. So it is in a very sticky situation. Golden Go will protect itself, maybe hoping that the icy wind misses or something of that nature, as it will obviously go into the protect, cause some problems in that way. But it's going to connect on this Salamence, and that is an easy knockout when you're super, super weak to a move of that type. And the Azzarelli just left to fire out the knockoff into the protect. Doesn't matter. This is the easiest pin. All he has to do is click Sucker Punch.
Yeah, I mean, he can click pretty much any move he wants to here. It's a really well-played game. So a crucial turn where the Masquerada dodged the Leaf Storm, but this whole set was so close.
It was a really, really good set played by both, and Jeudy had a commanding game 1, but Chuppa showed the depth of his team in games 2 and 3. It is going to be our first finalist, Chuppa Cross, making a fantastic start to the Scarlet Violet era here in VGC, and you've got to call it out. The Tatsugiri has won this game pretty much on its own without getting into the Dondozo's mouth. That is a very impressive showing and a really good understanding of how these teams work. The Golden Go is finally knocked out by the knockoff. Chuppa Cross will be our first finalist here in San Diego.
Congratulations to him, and a really well-played set by both sides, I thought. I actually really liked the adjustments that Jeudy made in Game 3. They just kind of didn't matter enough. It was very close, and I think I've been really impressed by how Chuppa's kind of played all of these games where, he's winding up with, that game, we've got Palmont, extremely frail, Meowscarada,